but there is a major realignment taking place. And not just a realignment here in the United States. In Europe, every time a country gets a chance to vote, they vote down joining the European Union. The problem is that they just keep bringing the vote back over and over again, like Ireland, till it passes. Now, we are joined for the balance of the hour with the European Member of Parliament from Yorkshire and Humber for the United Kingdom Independence Party. We're joined by Godfrey-Bloom, godfrey-bloom, mep.co.uk, to talk about a host of issues. But I wanted to get him back on last week when I saw some press releases he was putting out about the type of people that are coming into the European Parliament now and the type of bureaucrats that are hiring are open Marxist-Leninists. Now, then when you point out that almost all of Obama's czars or almost all the bureaucrats in the EU write books and articles saying they want total communism, then you say, I don't want communism. And they say, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, doesn't exist. I mean, you cannot ignore that Obama's diversity czar praises Mao and praises the Venezuelan leader, Hugo Chavez, who is starting to really become a dictator and restrict free speech. I mean, I liked it when he killed the North American Central American, South American union they were setting up. But, I mean, he just gets worse and worse by the minute. So we're going to be breaking that down with him, as well as the fact that it's now coming out that the swine flu hype was a profit-making scam and it was a dangerous vaccine. I want to get his view on that. Mr. Bloom, great to have you on with us.
A great pleasure again, Alex. Morning to you and morning to Texas.
I've thrown out a lot of issues there at the start, but let's get into your press release first with the type of individuals infesting the European Union, then the latest on Gordon Brown and Obama saying that they're going to try to just have the EU, England, and the U.S. start raising carbon taxes, even though Copenhagen failed to get a treaty. France says even though their Supreme Court found their carbon tax to be unfair and discriminatory because the government can selectively enforce it. That's their plan. Shut down their competition, give favors to friends. I want to talk about that as well, how they're trying to regroup. They're now announcing they're going to try to list other gases as deadly. So they're not giving up, even though they've been exposed.
Yes, I've been in the chamber this very afternoon talking about this very subject, actually, and it's interesting. Fascinating, I have to say, just how similar the problems that we both have, you in America over there and we here in Europe, the same lies, the same cheating, the same scams, all and about the same things. Absolutely fascinating how close we are. We're running along on parallel lines here with the lying and the cheating. It may help a little bit if I just explained where we are at the moment. Every 5 years we have a new parliament, which I mentioned briefly when I was on your show last. Every 5 years the commissioners change, or commissars as they're called by some countries here, and commissar is probably a better word. These individuals are selected by governments. There are 27 of them because we have 27 countries in the European Union. And these chaps are put forward with specific briefs, whether it's climate, whether it's the economy, whether it's consumers, whatever their brief happens to be. There are 27 of them, and every 5 years they're put forward, these characters, and we are allowed to interview them, and I'm allowed to ask them questions for 1 minute, and I'm allowed a supplementary question of 1 minute. So I, as an elected member for Yorkshire and North Lincolnshire, with over 250,000 votes on the committee, I'm only allowed 2 minutes to cross-examine these scoundrels, and they call that democracy.
Tell us about some of these individuals. I mean, they don't hide that they believe the European Union is the rebirth of basically the Soviet Union.
Yes, indeed. And out of the 27, we have, I think, around about 15 unashamed communists who don't try and pretend it. They don't try and cover it up. For an example, there's the Spaniard, Mr. Alumina, he's a self-confessed Marxist. He's a member of the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party, and he was part of a joint communist administration in Spain in the year 2000. and they supported the Kremlin when they were trying to stop the Baltic states getting their independence. So that's the sort of individual that we're dealing with. He's now in charge of Competition Commission. He's the Competition Commissioner. He's now in charge of 27 countries' competition arrangements.
So this is rule by the bureaucracy, just like Obama and his czars. They don't care what the Congress says. They don't care what the countries say. They just do whatever they want.
Well, they do, because my parliament, laughingly called a parliament, is not a parliament as you and I would understand it, Alex. It's an amending chamber. So we get the law comes across to my parliament from the commission bureaucracy, and we get to change a few of the sentences and put a couple of full stops and commas in. But the actual law is created by people like this. And I say there's 27 of them. They're all communists or Marxists and totally unashamed. Those who aren't necessarily communists have a fairly crooked background as well. So we've got a right bunch of scoundrels who are going to be taking care of British legislation, one of the oldest democracies on the face of the globe. I don't know how my country got into this mess.
When you talk to these individuals, and we actually have some of those YouTube clips coming up later, but when you talk to these people, I mean, they're not hiding this.
No, it's quite extraordinary, and the way they're allowed to get with, as I say, I have all the names here, all members of the Communist Party, or Marxists, or socialist workers, and those who aren't are scoundrels with very fishy backgrounds back at their own home countries, where they've all been either prosecuted or been involved in financial scandals of some description or another, including Ireland, so on and so forth. It was quite interesting. I might have mentioned this on your programme last time. For example, the commissioner that they brought in the last administration, Monsieur Barrot, absolutely fascinating. He was under a suspended prison sentence in France for embezzlement, and he was the commissioner to investigate fraud in the European Union. You simply couldn't invent it. In fact, I would be surprised if most of your listeners, or indeed the British listeners, who I know are addicted to your programme as well, will actually believe this. They think I'm a swivel-eyed lunatic, but it's all here in front of me.
So how does the Parliament ever actually get the rightful power of a democratic system, and how do you stop these commissars, or czars as we call them here, from just doing whatever they want?
Well, it's fairly interesting that, of course, you alluded to it earlier, quite rightly, that the French had their national referendum. The French rejected it. So did the Dutch. We were promised in Great Britain, a referendum by all the main political parties. They've all reneged on those promises, because they're all cheats and liars, and so we haven't been given our say. And the reason we haven't been given our say, of course, is because everybody knows the British would vote no, just as the Dutch and the French did, and the Irish did first time round, of course, being bullied into saying yes. So what we've got to do, we've got to find a new party. We have to find a new party across the globe. There has to be, and I mentioned this perhaps last time, maybe we need to be looking at something like the party, the Constitutional Party, I would suggest. We have a constitution. We have a very good constitution in Great Britain. It isn't a written constitution like yours in America. I would argue that your American Constitution is one of the greatest documents ever written by men who are significantly wiser than the men we have in charge now. We have the document. What we need to do is make sure that it gets back in force. And we need to write to the scoundrels who now govern us. And I was very, very interested to hear that the Republican had won. I predicted Obama's honeymoon period would probably last about a year. And it's been about a year before the American public realised they're dealing with a socialist scoundrel, and it's rumbled. And I'm very, very happy to see it, although I'm quite sure you're right, that the chap that they put in, if you scrape the surface, you'll find another scoundrel and socialist.
I mean, that's the problem. The people don't want big government. They don't want tyranny. But it just continues, and now Obama has the lowest approval rating of any president 1 year into his administration. It's right down at 40% and plunging. But, I mean, I guess the good news is the people are trying to reject it in Europe, in England, in the United States, and more the bureaucracy is hanging on by its fingernails. And more people are becoming aware that the European Union really is an illegitimate institution.
Yes, you're absolutely right. What I think that we need to do, both we here and you over there, of course, it was a very strong Democratic seat in Massachusetts, and we all know that. And I have to say, I regard a very suspicious family who've been running it for some time, but that's by the by. What I would suggest is that those people who swung, those people who used to vote Democrat and no longer do, and voted Republican, it's not just enough to vote Republican or vote for change. You have to write to the Democratic Party and those in power and tell them why you did it. Otherwise, they will go on believing it's an accident.
We're going to come back from break and continue along that line. And we're going to also get into what happened at Copenhagen and how the enemy's regrouping. Stay with us.